Today on episode 59 of Heroic Nonsense, we're taking to the skies with the brand new Transformers Age of the Prime Silverbolt. I'll show you the full breakdown, robot mode, CONCORDE JET mode, and extended supersonic flight form. Plus, we're comparing him to Air Raid, Slingshot, and some heavy hitters from other Transformers lines like Studio Series 86, and recreating epic G1 cartoon scenes you won't want to miss. All this and more in this week's spotlight of Silverbolt. Let's go. Finally here, Commander Class Silverbolt has landed and he's bringing with him the entire frame of Superion, which means we pretty much have our second combiner almost ready to take on Menasor. However, in this week's episode, we'll stay a bit more grounded and spend some time with the Aerialbot leader himself and see all that he has to offer. He's definitely an interesting one because, unlike Motormaster, whose trailer creates a perfect spot to hide all of Menasor's frame, Silverbolt has to be a bit more creative. Do I think the devs pulled it off? Well, yes and no. So let's jump right in this week's extra special review of Age of the Prime Silverbolt and find out why. I always appreciated the Aerialbots, but I'd be lying if I said that they were my favorite out of the combiners or even the planes growing up, simply because I have always been partial to the Decepticon combiners and seekers. That's not to say I don't think they're awesome, it's just they have heavy competition and someone had to come up on top. That doesn't mean I didn't want this set as a kid, and now having this updated version, I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised. Now this is due mostly to the combined form that we can now mostly create, and which we'll get into when we review Superion, but the figures so far, specifically in bomb mode, have been great representations of their cartoon versions, and Silverbolt is no exception. For a start, he looks exactly how I'd imagine him if he walked out of the cartoon, and honestly looks great for a G1 update. Mostly light gray like his TV and original toy form, he is punctuated by the classic red coloring on his upper frame as well as the equally classic yellow highlights, and sports a nice big Autobot symbol on his right upper chest, which is actually accurate to the original G1 toy and not the cartoon. As with many of the recent releases to date, especially regarding the Age of the Primes and Studio Series 86 figures, his face sculpt is impeccable and looks bang on to what I expect from the cartoon. I also love the extra bit of detail on the small wings right by each of his shoulders, which is just so perfect. Most of the side view is nice and clean, but there's no hiding the main body of the jet, which just hangs off the back. It can be hidden though if you press the wings back, but then you're not getting the more cartoon accurate look from the front point of view with his wings flared. From the back, however, it's way less noticeable, and for me at least, it's not a deal breaker. He does look like a bird from this angle though. He has quite a good range of movement, balances well in this pose, and can in fact rotate at the hips, which I think is key for a Commander class figure, and important for display and posability at this level. He also balances really well when placing him in the walking pose, and can even balance on one foot for more of a running shot, though it did take me a bit of playing around with him to get the right footing. Now this is where we start getting into the suspension of belief realm, which at least in this case is fine. Funny enough, and I never knew this, the original G1 version of him had a third mode, that of a launching pad, so I guess within that context this kind of works. It's essentially some sort of mobile base / defense system which is cobbled together from the frame of Superion, and which might be fine for playing with as a kid, but likely won't show up in many displays. Overall though, as far as the figure itself goes, he looks really good, especially from this angle, and harkens back to all the G1 goodness from our youth. But before we move on, a quick sneak peek at Superion himself, which I have to say is my favorite mode to date, and which we'll do a complete review of in a separate Superion spotlight. I can tell you, my kids absolutely love this guy and haven't stopped playing with him since we got him. Now look, high level, this is a fine jet mode which is based off of the CONCORDE JET from years ago and is completely identifiable as such. Yes, it has some kibble under the wing, but one, that's pretty much what the toy looked like back in the day as well, and two, it is hard to hide a full G1 accurate robot body in such a sleek, thin type of jet frame like that of the Concordes. I'm not saying that it can't be done, just that for a toy at this level, I think it's fair to say that this is what we're going to get. I think perhaps if they only made the red and black kibble a bit more smooth with an air intake feel to it, that would have worked much better. However, I still think it looks really good and totally captures both the essence of G1 Silverbolt in his alt mode as well as a CONCORDE JET in general. It does have some landing gear, with the front being more accurate than the back, though unfortunately there are no working wheels in any of the landing gear. The front cockpit and nose cone really do look great, as does the overall sleekness of the body, with the top-down view definitely taking the gold with only a bit of the undercarriage kibble poking out. Even this angle looks somewhat good, as I almost imagine the sides here being huge air intakes or boosters. You'll also note that Superion's head is incorporated into Silverbolt's body quite ingeniously actually, with his antenna poking out a bit. Good news, however, you can remove them if you don't like them sticking out like that. And the nose cone can even pivot downwards just like the real Concorde did. You can also have a bit of fun with this mode by opening up the tips of the wings and tail like I did here for this type of look, even if not accurate to the actual plane design itself. Now here's where things go off the rails a bit, because this is where all the pieces of Superion go. And it gets tacked on to Silverbolt's alt mode pretty crudely. It's effectively a block of plastic whose concept worked way better with Motormaster's trailer, as we'll see shortly. However, now having played around with it for a bit, it's not entirely bad and actually kinda looks cool if you take the lore and realism out of the equation. As unsightly as it is when both pieces are apart, the final combined form is starting to grow on me. It reminds me a bit of some type of supersonic, spacefaring, futuristic jet, and while it might not be anything we've seen in the cartoon before, it does give it a very Macross type feel to it. If I had to create any lore around it, I could imagine the back being a piece that attaches to Silverbolt to get around the globe quickly, perhaps even at the edge of space, and then detaches from him when flying at lower altitude with the team, while the back stays close by in orbit. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this attachment. Do you think it was the best way they could go about integrating the pieces rather than leaving them lying around? Would you have preferred nothing at all, or even a completely new frame for Superion? Let the community know in the comment section below. I've been highlighting comparisons in all the recent Aerialbot spotlights, so I'll create a playlist for those interested in seeing more comparisons and display ideas. For now, let's do some specific ones for Silverbolt, and there are quite a few in the end. Starting with Silverbolt and his fellow Aerialbots released to date, who in my opinion look great together so far. Hard to say what the right scale should be based off of the cartoon, but I'd say generally I like the way they line up here. I also wanted to highlight this comparison because the Stunticons and the Aerialbots generally use the same type of combining mechanism, so you're generally getting bots in the same height range. I really like the way these guys fit into the Studio Series line, and nice to see Optimus being almost a full head taller. Though I'm not too sure how I feel about Scrapper being this much smaller. However, it does make a bit more sense considering we have 6 Constructicons versus 5 of everyone else. And I definitely had to show you how he looks up against a Seeker. I love bots that scale in vehicle modes, and unfortunately you just can't do that here without some major engineering and likely cost bump. I would have loved to have seen a Concorde mode a bit larger to match up with the rest of the Aerialbots scale-wise, but I'm a realist, so this generally works for me. I do think they look nice together, with my preference being Air Raid and Silverbolt's jet design and coloring. Though I'm confident having all 5 Aerialbots together will look pretty darn cool as a team. Now here's where scale gets completely thrown out the window again, and understandably so, because having a Concorde in scale with a semi-truck and construction vehicle is pretty much a non-starter unless you want a Titan-class Silverbolt. Still, they are fun to have next to each other as the respective leaders of their combiner teams in the modes they are best known for. Given that I left out Silverbolt's Supersonic add-on, here's a better look at how the vehicles themselves compare when only taking into consideration their bot modes. Things start looking a bit, let's just say, bigger when we add in the combiner frames, and I get the impression that Silverbolt just looks like he has more, for lack of a better word. Although the scale is way off, Silverbolt and Motormaster do still kind of work next to each other when in their full vehicle modes. And you can see how the designers approach each of the frames when combined as part of the vehicle, taking wildly different approaches to the same overall pieces. As I said, the supersonic form of Silverbolt is starting to grow on me, and in the right angle, looks pretty cool next to Motormaster. And for the sake of completion, adding back in Scrapper here since these will be our combiners for the next foreseeable future. Just some more scale this time in vehicle mode between the different combiner teams, including their limbs. Silverbolt in this form next to his Aerialbot brothers is just massive and makes me wonder how amazing a proper Concorde in this scale would have looked. Let me know if any of you plan on keeping the figures in their jet modes for your displays, and if so, whether you'll use Silverbolt's Concorde look or take it up to the supersonic level. As I was trying to think of appropriate comparisons to pull in, this version of Astrotrain came to mind. I actually think scale-wise it works best, even the windows seem to line up to the right size between the two. It will be interesting to see if we get a proper updated Studio Series Astrotrain one of these days that cleans up his shuttle mode. And of course, we had to see how the Seekers look next to Silverbolt, and to be honest, I really like the way Starscream and Silverbolt look next to each other in this mode. With the new design for the Seekers on the horizon, we may start seeing less and less of this mold in my spotlights, which is a shame since we have a huge amount of them and they're still great looking figures. His transformation is pretty straightforward, so let's get right into it. First thing we're going to do is open up the chest, and we're going to pull out Superion's head which you have to be a little bit careful with because his antenna can fall off. And then we'll push back his head just like that. And just get the wings out of the way for the moment. So we can get these arms inside. So we'll start first by folding back the fists and then folding the arm backwards. You don't have to rotate it or anything. And then you're just going to turn them in like this till they click in. And then just let's position everything so that the chest folds back up like that. You're going to hear a click once everything's locked in place. Alright, so let's move to the legs now, and we'll close up the feet after splitting the legs apart. And then what you'll do is rotate the leg 90 degrees out, and you'll just push the foot up just like that. Now here's a little hint. I like to push the hinge up right here at this point so that this part here can fit in, and then you just have to push it in place and it clicks nice and tight. We'll do the same here, so just rotate the leg 90 degrees, push the foot in, and then right at the hinge just lift it up slightly and then place it like that and lock it in place. Now we'll just finish up the frame of the plane, pushing down the wings. We'll lift up this part. And what I like to do here is actually click the head into the antenna at these slots. Sometimes it takes a little bit of playing around with it, but in the end I think it's easier. So you heard that click, it's now in place. And then you just have to push everything down. And this part we're just going to lift up and pull back a bit. That also slots in place. And then finally we'll open up the nose like that. And just flip this out. Sometimes it's a little tricky as well. I'll get it any second now. And there we go. Fold it down, snap it back in, and there you have it. Silverbolt transformed. And if you want to lower the landing gear, so you just flip these parts back, and on the back of Superion's head is the front landing gear. Again, the wheels don't turn, but you know, it looks like they do. Now let's take a look at his supersonic jet mode, and I've already transformed one of the legs and one of the arms from Superion, so we'll just do the other two. So we'll start with this leg. You'll just push this back 90 degrees. Most of this stuff is on ratchets, and you got to pull out this little tab to unlock that part of the leg, and then we'll push the foot up and then push this connector down. Then we just have to pull out this side piece, and there you have it. Alright, so now let's do the arm. And this arm is pretty much the exact same as Menasor, so we'll just untab it and push it up. We'll push the fist in. We'll do the same on this side, so we'll untab it and then just push the whole thing up and click it back into place. And we'll open up this small side wing. And that's it for the arm. So let's go back to the legs. We'll take both transformed legs and connect them like this. And then we'll grab each of the arms and just tab them into place. We'll do the other side. They all fit in nice and easy. I think they've actually corrected some of the Menasor issues with the tabs. Now all we have left is really just this part of Superion's body, so we're gonna rotate these up 90 degrees And you're going to see some places to tab this in right on the back, right here. And you also have some smaller tabs on each of the sides, and they correspond to those right here. So let's just push it all together. It should click into place. And you can use this little piece here to slot in. And you just push that down 90 degrees as well and tab those in and just push it all together. Alright, to end it up, we're just going to grab his laser and fold this back 180 degrees. We'll close the handle and just kind of push this back 45 degrees. And you'll see a little tab right here where you can slot the laser in, and it makes a kind of tail wing like that, and just push it down. And then there's just one last thing to do, which is to open up these red connectors like so, and that's ready to attach to Silverbolt. So let's grab him, and there's a few things we got to do here. So just lift up the wings to get them out of the way for now. We're going to open up this part like that, and we're going to unfold these small tips to the wings. And you can just push the main wings down in a bit. We'll just click it in first. Let's just see if we can get it in. Just got to lift that back up. Harder to do on camera. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And fold the wings back down, click them in. And there he is in his supersonic jet mode. And we have one more transformation for you, and we're going to turn this back into that minigun outpost. So we'll just take off that laser and we'll pull this part off. Just going to untab. We'll close up these red connector pieces. And that's pretty much ready to go, actually. So this is the last main part. We'll just flip that up 90 degrees. We're going to flip this part of the leg 180 degrees. Not at the ratchet, just at that part I just showed you. And then you can see right here, these small tabs, they're going to connect right here, like so. Just got to push them in. They're not the tightest of tabs, but they're fine. And now all we have to do is open up the laser. And you can place it right, you see these tabs, they fit right there where those gray slots are. And there it is. That was pretty easy. The best combiner displays, in my opinion, will involve all the bots from that team, and in our case will likely be in their combined modes, though still not entirely sure. It's always fun to break the teams apart and place the individual bots together in some kind of action pose, especially when they look this good together and truly look like a cohesive unit. But there's always an opportunity to think outside the box and have a bit of fun, which I started doing, especially when we're missing the full team. And in this case, what better display idea than to have Optimus meeting the Aerialbots for the first time and choosing Silverbolt to lead the team. Now if you have Vector Sigma, there's plenty of ways you can create some interesting combinations, because after all, at least in the cartoon, that's the way the Aerialbots were created. And throwing in Studio Series 86 Optimus and some of the original Primes, now that we will have quite a few, some of which are in different iterations, will totally be something you can let your imagination run wild with. I also like more static team poses, and the Aerialbots feature quite a bit in the post-movie era cartoons as well, so having Silverbolt as part of this team actually works well and looks really nice. I could have included even more bots here like Blaster and Perceptor, as well as Grimlock and Wheelie, but you get the idea. And interestingly, I think Silverbolt fits the aesthetic of this post-86 movie era quite nicely. Something I've also been doing lately, especially with the combiner-related spotlights, is replicating scenes from the cartoons and movies that are typically part of my Guess That Scene game that I like to include every so often, as they can totally double for additional display ideas. I have to say that I found more unique Aerialbot and specifically Silverbolt scenes from the first few seasons of the original G1 Transformers cartoon to replicate, which gives you guys a bit of a narrow list of cartoon episodes to choose from. But let me know which ones you remember from these images and which bring back fond memories from the show. I'll call out here that my favorite to do out of this bunch was the one of Optimus and Ironhide escaping on the back of Silverbolt, where I ended up using the core class versions because the main ones were way too big. The Motormaster and Optimus one was a close second. No plastic on this one, so we get a nice big picture, and not only of Silverbolt in his bot mode and all modes, but some of the rest of the team as well. And it's all set against a backdrop of what looks to be Cybertron, which is awesome. Really great comic book style here as well. And the side has a beautiful shot of Superion, which, like I said earlier, also looks amazing in toy form. The back showcases all the transformation gimmicks as well. This is definitely a full set you're getting with Silverbolt, and fun to have even if missing the other Aerialbots. Really nice packaging in the end, definitely a keeper. So that's it for this week's spotlight on Age of the Prime Silverbolt. Is this a must-have for you collectors and fans? Let me know. And if you're new here and like what we do, please like and subscribe so you can keep coming back to this awesome community we're developing. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Transform!